Hey guys, this is John with CheatSheetPros.com. Sorry my voice is a little hoarse today, but I wanted to get this video up while it's All-Star break weekend. So, as always, if you want to try our sheets out, if you're not familiar with us, we have a free Facebook group, which I'll put the link in the description. The cheat sheets are posted there every Thursday for free for everybody to play with, and other random days of the week whenever I get a wild hair. If you want to try our premium group, we cover daily fantasy sports, sports betting, prop bets, and prize picks. It's $14 a month or $35 for 3 months. So if you want to give it a try, it's pretty inexpensive compared to most services out there. The new sheet that we're going to go over today, we're going to take a look at is for prize picks and player props. So if you're not familiar with prize picks, it's a website where you can parlay individual player props or fantasy points over under for money. It's not available in all states, but if it is available in your state and you do not have an account yet, please contact me as we have some good referral codes for you. The other one is for prop bets. So if you bet on sports, if you're into sports betting, you're familiar with prop bets and individual players. So we'll take a look at that. So I want to stress that this sheet does not give you plays. You don't open it up and it's like, boom, play this, 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 this. So it's not a handicapping service, so to speak. What we're doing is we create tools to help you research and find the plays that you want. So if I'm looking for something and I can't find it, I'll usually make a sheet and create it to run in the background. So I'm really focusing on teaching people how to look and find plays, but I also post my plays when I have time to show people how I use the sheet and how I find my plays. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at the sheet. I'm going to show you what it looks like, the different columns. I'm going to show you how to use it, and then we're going to look at the benefits of it, and then we're going to look at a few players, and then hopefully wrap this video up so we have somewhat of a mini tutorial before it releases. So this is the look of the sheet right here. This is as it is right now on March 6th, so it may change a little bit. I may add some stuff, move some stuff, but overall this is the skeleton of it. So over here we've got the date of the game, so you can always look at the last date of the games to make sure that it's refreshed and you've got the most up-to-date data. We got the minutes played, and I rounded it to the nearest minute. It looked better. And then this is for prize picks. So this is the prize pick points per game, and then this is also the prize pick points per minute, so you can get an idea of the efficiency of the player. We have the home road split, so you can see maybe you notice a trend of a player doing better at home versus on the road, vice versa. Same thing with minutes. When you're trying to project minutes, sometimes they play more or less in a blowout and home or road. And then the team column, you might think this seems redundant here, but when you're putting in the name, there's a lot of last names that overlap in the NBA, so the team will be able to tell you if you've got the right player or not. An example is when I was first doing the sheet, I had Ball, so we got Lonzo Ball and LaMelo Ball. So when you typed in Ball, it pulled the first one, so I had to make some changes, but I got the team in there just so you can verify you got the right player. And then over here, we've got the opponent, and I went ahead and I took the logos right off the cheat sheet that we use, so it should look pretty familiar. And what's good about this, you can go back and say if he played, Sacramento, what did he do last time? You can see his stats. You can see what he did, price points per minute. So that's beneficial. I think right now we go, it's somewhere between 12 and 15 games. I might add a couple more on there and get the last 15. And it's sorted where the most recent game's up top and then it goes down. And then these are your player prop stats that are the most popular. We have your points. These are the real life points per game they scored, the rebounds, and then the assist. And then block, steals, turnover. This is more for prize picks because blocks and steals are key stats in prize picks fantasy points because they're plus 3 points for each one. So I've got it on here to calculate these numbers and also to see if there's a trend of a team giving up more blocks and steals, etc. And one of my favorite player prop bets is points plus rebounds plus assist. So instead of sitting here for every player going, okay, what's 26 plus 11 plus 8? All right, he did 45 that day. What's 27 plus 8 plus 3? He did 38 that day. I just wanted a column where if his over-under is 50, I can go, whoop. All right, how many times did he go over 50? And just look at the single column that totals these three. So that makes it a lot easier. And you can see it's somewhat color-coded. I think over 50, I did this black and yellow. 40s, I did this green. And then if it's somewhere in the mid upper 30s, it's this like orange goldish. and then I think it goes down to blue if it's below that. Now over here we've got this is your shooting stats over here, and the reason I have these on here, there's a couple key stats I like to look at for player props. So you've got your field goals made versus field goals attempted, and then 3-pointers made, 3-pointers attempted, and then I pulled in the percentages just so you can see if someone's shooting good, shooting poorly. When you're betting a excuse me, when you're betting a player points over or under, field goals attempted is key. So if a guy, let's say he was 2 for 18, of course, a lot of people might not be on him, but I would look at that and say he took 18 field goal attempts and only made 2. Yeah, he's going to trend up from there. So it kind of helps to see how many field goal attempts somebody's taken and then how well they're shooting over the last 5 games, 10 games, or even, 15, 20 games. So this is how the sheet looks. Now we're going to go into how to use the sheet. One more thing I want to hit. This up here, we have the last 5-game average across the top. This was a pain in the butt to make, so please use it. I had to go back into every individual player and convert it from over to a numeric, and it was very exhausting. So up here across the top, this is the last 5-game average, and if you want, we could move this to last 3-game average and whatnot. And so over here, this is going to be your average prize picks over the last 5 games, your average prize pick points per minute over the last 5 games. So if you have a player that's going to play 20 minutes, you've got a good number you can multiply by to figure out where he's going to be. But if you think he's going to play 30 minutes because of a blowout or whatnot, I would use this last 5 average by how many minutes you think he's going to get a rough average. And then over here, the 5-game average is just right above it. So here your points, rebounds, and assists. Last 5, he averages 48.6. Points is 32.8. Rebounds 10.2. Assist 5.6, etc., etc. So this will give you a good starting point when you're comparing lines. So if you're looking at the player that's up here and his over-under points is, let's say, 30, you're like, okay, he's averaging 32.8 over that. So you can kind of look down at the games and see, okay, is it 2 games over, 2 games under? Is 4 of them over? And then he had 1 game where he played 5 minutes. So you can break it down a little further. To look for players, so up here, I try to make it real big. It just says enter player last name. So put in the last name on here. So we might say Ball. Now Ball is going to give you an error. It's going to say it doesn't match. Now when that happens, you see this little drop down box up here. So you can either type in the last name or you can click this drop down and it's going to show you all the players that we have in the database. I think there's 110 when I counted them yesterday. Now when you get to someone that has a duplicate last name like Ball, we got LaMelo and Lonzo, you can see here that I went ahead and for most of them I put the first name. So like Tobias Harris is Harris T, but then, for Ball I wrote out it's Ball L. Well, that's the same. So I thought Ball LA and Ball LO were too much alike. So I just put LaMelo and Lonzo. So this way when you click LaMelo, you can see, look at the team, make sure I've got the right person in there, and then you can get his stats. So instead of just typing in the last name, when I ran into that issue, I was like, all right, let's make it a drop-down menu as well. That way you can find it. And like, for example, there's Joe Harris and Tobias Harris. So that's just Harris T. So the drop-down menu, you can at least go to H, see if he's in there. Not every player is going to be in the database yet. It takes about 5 minutes to get a player entered into the database, and I've got 110 in there right now. So I went an entire week, and every prize pick player that they listed for fantasy points, I put him in there. And the next day, if there was a new guy, I added him. If the next day, new guy. So I have a good chunk of the ones that are gonna come up on prize picks, so to speak. So that's how you enter the name. After you do that, it's pretty much right here. Now I'm working on another tab you can see down here where I can put 2 or 3 players side by side and see how they do. And the reason I like doing that is for prize picks, when you're parlaying them, I want to find some players that correlate. I do not believe prize picks will allow you to do a same game parlay only. You have to have at least 1 player on the card from another game, which is fine. That's not hard to do. But for example, if you have Chris Paul and Devin Booker, typically one of them is going to do really well, the other one's going to go under. So depending upon where their lines fall, if you think Paul's going to have a good night, instead of just saying, okay, Chris Paul over fantasy points, we could increase our payout by saying Chris Paul over, Devin Booker under, if we get players that correlate, now we have 2 picks on that parlay card to drive the price up a little bit more. And we'll go into that more details once we get back in and the season's going and we do some research. So we've looked at the card, we know what the stats are, we know how to use the card. So what's the benefit of this? So the benefit of using this sheet is when I look at player props, I always look at game logs. Well, it's exhausting to try to go to ESPN and pull up the player and then look at the game logs and see what they did. So I wanted to put all this shit in one place where I can put in a name and I can see everything I want. Also, I couldn't find anything that shows the prize points players scored over recent games. So I was like, all right, well, while I'm doing this game logger, I'm going to calculate it into prize pick points and then do a per minute, because that's how we come up with a lot of our fantasy projections. It's just your fantasy points per minute and then how many minutes they're going to play and that range. That's how we come up with stuff. So one of the benefits of this is you have everything in one spot. You know, you can look at the last 15 games. I can see the prize picks that they scored each of those games. I can see the price point per minute. I can compare the home road splits. I can see who they played. I can look at all the individual game logs. Now, yes, you can take this and log into ESPN or these other websites and find it. It takes a long time, so I'm trying to make it a little bit easier for you. And then we got the last game averages right here on the top. Some of the other benefits that I have on here that I really like is this column I didn't mention. So this just shows a win or a loss. I did green and red, so it really stands out. And you can see the final, what they won by or what they lost by. So they won by 16. This one they lost by 3, won by 14, won by 7. So you kind of get an idea of what these numbers mean. What's key about this is you can compare this to the minutes played. So now we can tell if there's a blowout, does a player play more minutes or less minutes? So one of the guys that I wrote down here that I wanted to look at in the video is Joel Embiid. Now you can see his prize picks. You know, he's usually about 55 a night, over under. Well, looking at just his last 4 games, he's got 2 under and 2 massively over, so it drives his average up. So that kind of tells you he's an up and down player. You know, he's hitting it about 50% of the time. Not a lot of consistency there. And then what jumped out at me here on his minutes are, you know, he played 39, 26, 40, 27. Well, this 26 and 27 that you see here, they won by 16, they won by 14. So these, you know, were games you might consider a blowout or a big lead, so he played less minutes. So now if I'm looking at Embiid and he's going up against a game and they're minus double digits, that's probably going to be a blowout. Maybe we project him to go for 26, 27 minutes. Most fantasy sites are going to put the average, you know, per game of 35 or 33, and they'll bump it up or down a little bit, but not a lot. But here you can really hone in and see, okay, in this close game he played 40 minutes, in this somewhat close game he played 39, and then he was high 20s here. So something to watch for, because players like Lou Williams, you know, they might play more in a blowout, vice versa. So that was one of the benefits. One of the other ones is just seeing the price picks per game, like we said before. I haven't seen that anywhere, so I just wanted to create it. I love doing price picks. It's fun. I fought it for a long time, but I actually enjoy it compared to classic NBA DFS. And then this price point per minute, this will help you kind of come up with an average, and we'll tinker with some projections and stuff in the future, so I like having that in there so I can look at it. Also, home road splits, like we had said. You can compare the price point production at home versus on the road. And so you can see here, Embiid at home has been smashing, you know, 1-9, 1-8, 1-8, 1-8, and then road 101, 146. So I would say, hey, he plays much better at home. The prior opponent's another one. So you can glance down here. So say he's playing Houston. Well, I would want to look and say, okay, has he played Houston? Yes, right here. Okay, so what did he do against Houston last time? And you can see how many price points he put up, points, rebounds, assists, and then break it down. And that also helps with player props, because some guys match up with other guys that they've seen several times and they just tend to do much better. And then we've already addressed this, the points, rebound, assist column. That's something new that I added. And then averages versus the logs. So when we've got the average here, and then we look at the game logs, like we looked at Embiid here, who's 55.8 average price picks over the last 5. But then you look at his games, and if his number was 55, he's only been over it twice, under it 3 times in these last 5 games. And you could even take it down one more and say, okay, he's been under that 1, 2, 3, 4. So he's 4-2 for an under, and 2 games he went over, and then vice versa. And then a game, let me see if so Adebayo. So he's someone I wanted to show you. Look at his consistency for minutes. I mean, he's 32 to 36. I mean, almost on the dot, just bing, 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 all the way down. And then, I mean, he's got a few outliers, a high one and a low one. But I mean, look at how many games he was just between like 41 and 45 points. 43, 45, 44, 41, 41, 41. So sometimes you can look at this and say, okay, Adebayo is a pretty consistent player no matter who he plays. And if they set his number at like 38, you can say, okay, I'm going to go over that. He's been over that, 7 out of the last 8 games. Or maybe they get crazy and they set it at 44, 45. Then you could look at it and say, well, he's consistently low 40s. Maybe I'm going to go under on it. And then it just gives you an idea of, it kind of points you in the right direction, so to speak. So those are some of the benefits of the sheet. So I just want to look at a couple of players real quick. So like Adebayo, we see the consistency. Embiid, we saw he plays better at home, and he's a little bit up and down. So some of the games he's over, some of the games he's under. But you can see a lot of the main players that you're going to see for prop picks are going to be on here. I typically go through my sports book and I look at all of the players in here. If there's a player I don't have, I put it on a post-it note, and then I usually sit down about every 3 days and take a couple hours and enter those players. So as we go on, more players will be entered into this. And then you've got like Westbrook here. He's pretty much a consistent. His over-under is usually around 50. And you can see, I'd look at this and say, okay, he's 65, 53, slightly under, over, under, over, over, over. And I did have something where you could put in the price pick points up here, and then it would tell you if he's over, under. But that's just kind of exhausting. And if you guys want it, I'm happy to add it. It's just for me, I type the name in, and I'm going to look and then go on to the next player. I'm not going to type in the name and then put in the points and then look. But I can do that if you guys want. And then points, rebounds, assists. What I like seeing is, who was it I had last week? I think it was Zion. So Zion Williamson. So he was inactive this last game, but I was looking at this right here for his rebounds when I was looking through my player props, and they had him at I think it was over under 8. It might have been 8. I think it was 8.5 the game he got ruled out on March 4th, the top one. But prior to that, it was over under 8 rebounds. Well, I looked at this here, and I'm like, over under 8 rebounds, he's got 9, 10, 14, 8, 6, and 10. I mean, here he pushed, and every other time he went over except for one time, and he barely missed it by 2. So I was making a lot of money on over rebounds for him just because of how consistent he was. And the reason I like the Pelicans is they always play high-scoring games, no defense. Totals are always in the upper 220s, low 230s. And when someone's on fire like that, then, that's something I like to do. But if you look at his points over here, 28, 26, 23, I think he was at 25.5. So to me, that was a good number they set that line at. So I stayed away from that. But I really like the rebounds because he was going over it so many times. One of the other things is when you're looking at player props on your sports book, I had on this day when he didn't play, I think it was Zion over 8.5 rebounds. Well, since he had been going over that, they bumped it from 8 to 8.5, so I was fine with that, and I bet it. It was void because he didn't play or was inactive. But when I went over to Prize Picks to put my players in, they had him over 7.5 rebounds. So I was just blown away. That was a lock for me. Look at how many times recently he's been over 7.5. To me, they set that line too low and they didn't change it. So the sportsbook either set it perfectly or drove it up a little bit. But that's something to keep an eye on, is looking at your sportsbook versus Prize Picks. So typically what I do is if I get time in the afternoon, and most days I try to cut out about an hour and a half to get this done, is I type in every Prize Pick player on here. And I look at their numbers, I look at their stats, I see if there's anything that jumps out at me, and I write them down on a piece of paper. And then I go to my sports book, and I go down all the player props in there. Now, my sports book's limited. It doesn't give you every player. There's about 30 that I have the opportunity to bet on, and it's usually one or the other. It's points, points, rebounds, assist. It's very specific, so I can get through it pretty quick. But sometimes I'll notice either my sports book is a lot lower than Price Picks on one that I like, so then I'll hammer it in the sports book. And then other times, like Zion, his rebounds, he might be 8.5 on Price Picks, and I'm taking the over. Well, when I get to my sports book, if it's 7.5, then I'm going to hammer it, or vice versa. So some nights I'll bet stuff in the sports book. Other nights I'll bet it on Price Picks and parlay it up, just depending. I usually don't do both. I just don't want to have too much exposure. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. Looks like we're sitting about 20 minutes, but this is what the sheet looks like. I'm going to still tinker with it a little bit more and add some stuff to it and make sure it's calculating correctly and get some more players in here since we've got All-Star break weekend. So join our free Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter. Website's CheatSheetPros.com. The Twitter little birdie links at the bottom if you want to check that out. I post a lot of my plays and sports bets on there. We had a really good last 2 weeks, so hopefully we can start the second half of NBA the same way and cruise right into MLB. Good luck, guys. Have a good weekend.